And Mr. Inslee for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Eshoo, to allow me to participate this. I think this is very important, and I appreciate the Commission's work on this effort, because I really do believe the Internet does run a risk of becoming the outer net if we don't protect Americans' access to it. Because, and I say outer net because you will be out of luck if your service provider decides that they want you to go to their content provider that they've struck a deal with or they've struck a merger with, rather than what you want to go to on the Internet. And anyone who doesn't understand that threat doesn't understand the enormous commercial interest in cornering lanes of this freeway. Now, everyone has a metaphor. I'll just tell you how I look at it, in that this is a freeway, and the risk we face is that individual entrepreneurs, out of commercial instinct, will and do control the on lanes to the freeway. Now, I don't know how my Republican colleagues think about it, but I'll tell you, if some commercial entity today put down gates on I-5 on the Mercer Street entrance to Interstate 5 in Seattle, Washington, and said you couldn't go past that gate unless you agreed to go to my favored shopping center. I'll just pick Walmart for a minute, not to anything bad about Walmart, instead of Costco, which my competitor has to deal with. And that's the risk we face. We face people putting gates on this freeway if you don't go to my favorite shopping center that I've struck a deal with as a service provider. And so I want to thank you for your work on this. But I do want to ask you about some concerns, because I think there's some things we need to continue to explore. And one of them I have a principal interest in is how we prevent this from happening in the wireless space, because we know so much is going to the wireless space. And I guess I do have a concern that we have acted in the wired space, which you can think of a little bit as yesterday, but not in the wireless space, which I think of as tomorrow, which is going to be the future of this thing. And I hate to think the thing that we did a right thing in the wired space, but not in the wireless. I just wonder, Mr. Copps and Mr. Chairman, if you could both address that concern, what the options may be for us. I appreciate it.
Well, for my part, I would agree and express some concern about that, because in many ways I think wireless is now too. Lots of people are cutting their lines and taking to wireless and accessing broadband that way too. I understand that there are differences, and when you implement a network neutrality rule, you have to be cognizant and sensitive to those differences in how you proceed. But I think the principle should apply, and the rule generally should have applied. If I could just say one more thing real quickly, I really appreciated your illustration of the I-5 example that you used, because I was sitting here thinking during much of the discussion, the last great infrastructure build-out that this country had was the interstate highway system. And we made darn sure there were on-ramps and that they were open. And all of this talk about, oh, it's prospective and all, we put safety precautions on there prospectively. We put speed limits on there prospectively. There's nothing wrong with doing things prospectively, particularly when you're talking about safeguarding such a transformative infrastructure as we're talking about here.
Well, I would just add that agree that the importance of mobile access to the Internet is growing every day. In the order we adopted, we did take steps to promote Internet freedom. The transparency provisions, no blocking. We also wanted to be cognizant about some of the differences between wireless and fixed, and it's something that we'll continue to pay attention to and do what we can to make sure that Internet freedom is protected on mobile Internet access as well as fixed.
Well, there may be some challenges in wireless, but I hope you all will consider them, because we hate to create a safety system for the horse and buggy day, but not for the car day, and I think that's kind of the transition we're in there. Just any of the other commissioners, if you'd like to comment, feel free.
Yes, Congressman, I too do not want the development of two separate worlds, one wired and one wireless. Increasingly, individuals are cutting the cord, as my colleague said, it's approaching 30%, especially in communities that might have economic challenges that have to choose which direction to go. And interestingly enough, certain communities only access the internet because this is an only affordable means with these mobile devices. So it is important that their experience is as robust as those are in the wired world, and I share your concerns. And again, there is no presumption that these open internet rules do not apply. They do apply in this space.
Gentleman's time is, oh, go ahead and finish.
Well, I was going to say that this isn't really a question of politics or philosophy. It's actually a question of physics. And then there are actual technical parameters that justify this decision. None of us want, you know, consumers are the ones that don't benefit if their phones don't work. I got into a cab the other day. He was streaming CNN on his iPhone, which I thought was really great. And then I thought, actually, you're the reason why I can't make a phone call. So I think that there are technical parameters that we need to work with that actually exist in the wireless world that justify this distinction.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time's expired. We'll now go to the gentleman from New Hampshire.